The funeral reception had 47 people. I counted them while my brother Marcus stood at the front of our father's brownstone, laughing too loud with cousins he hadn't seen in 10 years. Everyone expected me to fall apart,
To cry.
to make a scene. Instead, I straightened my black dress and took a slow sip of water. Marcus caught my eye across the room. He smiled. Not the sad smile of a grieving son. The confident smile of someone who'd already won. Because Marcus didn't know what I'd found 3 weeks ago. He didn't know I'd been documenting everything for 6 months. And he definitely didn't know about the envelope in my purse. What happened next would destroy him completely. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how a forensic accountant like me ended up at war with her own brother. I met Marcus on October 15, 1996. I was 3 years old. He was 8. Mom brought him home from the hospital where she worked as a nurse, explaining that his mother couldn't take care of him anymore. "He's your big brother now," Dad said, lifting Marcus onto his shoulders. "We take care of family." Marcus wore a red jacket too big for him. His eyes were wide and scared. I gave him my favorite stuffed bear. He held it all night. For years, we were inseparable. Marcus taught me to ride a bike on the sidewalk outside the brownstone. I was 6, he was 11. He ran beside me for hours until I could balance on my own. I helped him with math homework at the kitchen table. We'd sit for hours, me explaining fractions while he pretended to be frustrated but secretly proud his little sister could teach him something. We had pizza Fridays from Marcello's on the corner. Marcus liked pepperoni. I liked plain cheese. We'd watch movies until midnight. Dad built his accounting firm from nothing, working 70-hour weeks to give us everything. The brownstone in Bolton Hill, private schools, college funds. Every Sunday, Dad made pancakes. We'd race down the stairs to the kitchen. Dad would flip pancakes high in the air, making us laugh. "This house will be yours someday," Dad told us on my 16th birthday, his hand on the mahogany banister. "Both of you. Keep it in the family. Take care of each other." Marcus squeezed my shoulder. "Always, Pops. That's what family does." I believed him then. Marcus was already at Howard University, studying business. He'd come home every few weeks, always needing money for books or rent or opportunities. Dad always gave it to him. $500. $1,000. Whatever Marcus asked for. The fracture started small. Marcus graduated and moved to Miami for a real estate opportunity. His visits became twice a year, then yearly, then only on major holidays. Dad never complained. "He's building his future," he'd say. I stayed in Baltimore, got my degree in accounting from Towson, joined a firm specializing in forensic work. Finding fraud, tracing hidden money, catching people who thought they were too smart to get caught. Dad was so proud. "My daughter, the detective," he'd joke. When I was 25, I moved into the 3rd-floor apartment of the brownstone. "Just until I save up," I told Dad. "Stay as long as you want," he said. "It's your home." I handled his books for the firm, did his taxes, managed his investments. Marcus called every few months, always talking about his deals and his properties. Always too busy to visit. 3 years ago, Dad started forgetting things. Small things first. Where he put his keys. I'd find them in the refrigerator. The freezer once. He'd laugh it off, but I saw the worry in his eyes. Whether he'd taken his medication. I started using a pill organizer with the days clearly marked. Even then, he'd forget if it was Tuesday or Thursday. The name of his longtime secretary, Martha, who'd worked for him for 22 years. He called her Mary one day, then Margaret. She pulled me aside after a meeting, her eyes concerned. "Keisha, is your father okay?" I took him to specialists. First our family doctor, who referred us to a neurologist. Then a geriatric psychiatrist. Then a memory care specialist at Johns Hopkins. They ran tests, cognitive assessments, brain scans, blood work to rule out other causes. "Early-stage dementia," the neurologist said gently, showing me the scan results. "You can see here and here. The brain is showing signs of atrophy. It will progress." "I'm sorry." I sat in that office, holding the printed scan, feeling my world tilt. Dad was only 68. He'd always been sharp, quick with numbers. Could remember client details from 30 years ago. I called Marcus. Dad's sick. Dementia. You should come home. We need to talk about what happens next.
Damn.
That's rough, sis. Look, I will. Just let me close this deal first. I'm so close to something big here. Marcus, this is serious. Dad needs us. I know. I'll come soon. Promise. Just give me 2 weeks to wrap this up. He didn't come. Not in 2 weeks. Not in 2 months. I called again. And again. Always the same excuses. The same promises. The same soon. So I cut back to part-time at my firm. My boss understood. Family first, Keisha. Your position will be here when you're ready. Dad needed someone to drive him to appointments 3 times a week. Someone to manage his medications, which had grown to 11 different prescriptions. Someone to make sure he ate, because he'd forget meals entirely. Someone to sit with him on the bad days, when he didn't recognize where he was. When he'd ask where his mother was, not remembering she'd died 40 years ago. I was there for every doctor visit, every therapy session, every moment of confusion when he'd wake at 3 a.m. thinking he needed to go to work. Every time he'd look at me with tears in his eyes and say, "I'm sorry, baby girl. I'm so sorry this is happening." Every time I'd hold his hand and tell him it was okay, that I was there, that I wasn't going anywhere. Marcus sent flowers on Dad's birthday, called every month or so, conversations lasting less than 10 minutes. Always had an excuse why he couldn't visit. Always said he'd come next month. I'm building something big here, Keisha. Dad would understand. You know how he always said we should pursue our dreams. 8 months ago, Dad took a turn. The dementia accelerated. 1 week he was asking where he'd put his glasses. The next, he didn't recognize his own bedroom. He started getting confused about who people were. Called me by his mother's name, Ruby. Asked where his father was. His doctor recommended memory care. Showed me brochures for facilities. But I couldn't do it. Couldn't put Dad in a building that smelled like antiseptic. Couldn't let him wake up confused, surrounded by strangers. I quit my job completely. Became Dad's full-time caregiver. 24 hours a day. 7 days a week. My savings account drained. First the emergency fund. Then my wedding savings. Then my 401k for medical equipment. A hospital bed. A wheelchair. Grab bars. A medical alert system. Insurance covered some things. Not the extra help I needed. Not the specialized food. Not all the medications. My social life disappeared. I canceled dates. Stopped going to book club. Missed my best friend's wedding. Friends stopped calling eventually. I'd become the person who always canceled. But Dad had raised me. Had been both mother and father after Mom died when I was 8. This was what family did. I called Marcus again. Dad's getting worse. He doesn't remember me half the time. I need help. Even if you can't come, maybe help with the medical bills?
I'm drowning.
Silence. Then, times are tight right now, sis. Market's been rough. Send me the biggest bills. He sent $500.
Once.
The medical bills that month were $8,000. 6 months before Dad died, Marcus finally came home. He showed up at the brownstone in a rented BMW, wearing a designer suit that cost more than my monthly budget. "How's the old man?" he asked, barely glancing at Dad, who sat in his chair, lost in memories from 40 years ago. "He has good days and bad days," I said carefully. "Today's been rough." He didn't recognize me this morning. Marcus nodded, already distracted by his phone. "That's tough, sis. Really tough." He stayed for 3 days. Took Dad to lunch once at a restaurant Dad didn't remember. Spent the rest of the time on his phone, talking about properties and investors and opportunities that can't wait. I watched him pace the living room, always mid-deal, always urgently needed elsewhere. On the last day, he took Dad to his lawyer's office. Said they needed to update some paperwork. "What kind of paperwork?" I asked, alarm bells ringing in my forensic accountant brain. "Just boring estate stuff. Marcus said, waving dismissively. Making sure everything's in order. You know how Dad is about being organized.
You
know what I mean. My stomach tightened. Marcus, Dad can barely remember what day it is. Should he be signing legal documents? It's fine. Mr. Patterson knows Dad. He'll make sure everything's proper. Don't worry about it. I'd like to come with you. No need. It's just guy stuff. Dad would want this to be between us men, you know? Something felt wrong, but I was exhausted, running on 4 hours of sleep, drowning in medical bills and caregiver burnout. I let it go. That was my mistake. Dad died on a Tuesday morning in February. Peaceful. In his sleep. I was holding his hand. Marcus arrived 3 days later for the funeral. The service was beautiful. 70 people came. Dad's former clients, his employees, friends from church, neighbors who remembered him as the man who'd shovel their walks in winter. Everyone hugged me, told me how strong I'd been,
How Dad was so lucky to have me.
Marcus stood at the front, accepting condolences like a politician. Thank you for coming. Yes, it's been so hard. We'll miss him terribly. I watched him. The practiced sadness. The perfect words. He caught my eye and smiled. That same confident smile. The will reading was scheduled for 3 days after the funeral. I arrived at the lawyer's office early. Mr. Patterson had been Dad's attorney for 30 years. He'd drawn up the original will when Marcus and I were teenagers. Back then, it was simple. Everything split 50-50 between Marcus and me. Marcus arrived 15 minutes late, bringing his fiancée, Crystal, a 24-year-old real estate agent he'd been dating for 6 months. This is just a formality, Marcus said, squeezing Crystal's hand. Right, Mr. Patterson? Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. Let's begin. He opened a folder. My heart started pounding. Something felt wrong. This is the last will and testament of William James Washington, dated September 12th of last year. Last year. Not the original will from 15 years ago. Wait, I interrupted. September? That was after Dad's dementia diagnosis. Marcus's smile tightened. Dad was fine in September. Just a little forgetful. He thought I was his mother in September. He asked me where his parents were. Mr. Patterson continued reading, voice uncomfortable. The brownstone, worth $2.3 million in this market, went to Marcus. The investment portfolio, another $400,000, to Marcus. Dad's life insurance policy, $150,000, to Marcus. To me, $50,000 and Dad's personal effects. The room spun. That's not right, I whispered. Dad wouldn't. Dad wanted to make sure the property stayed in capable hands, Marcus interrupted. He knew I had the business experience to manage it properly. I lived there. I took care of him. I gave up my career. And Dad appreciated that. That's why he left you money for your trouble. For my trouble.
3 years of my life.
My savings. My career. My father's final years. Reduced to trouble. Crystal squeezed Marcus's arm. Baby, can we talk about the remodel plans after this? She didn't even have the decency to pretend to be respectful. There's more, Mr. Patterson said quietly, looking at me with something like pity. Marcus has requested we expedite probate. He's planning to sell the property. Sell it. My voice cracked. That house has been in our family for 40 years. It's my house now, Marcus said. And Crystal and I are buying a beach property in Miami. We need the capital. I looked at him. Really looked at him. The expensive suit. The designer watch. The rental BMW outside. Everything built on promises and borrowed money. And now he was taking the one thing Dad had built. The one thing that was supposed to be ours.
I'm contesting this will, I said.
Marcus laughed. On what grounds? Dad made his choice. He wanted someone who'd actually do something with the assets. Dad had dementia. He couldn't make legal decisions. His doctor never declared him incompetent. The will is valid. We'll see what a judge says. Go ahead and try, Marcus leaned back. But contesting it will take months.
Years, maybe.
And costs tens of thousands in legal fees. Can you afford that, little sister? The room went quiet.
Everyone was looking at me,
waiting for me to cry,
to beg,
to break down. Instead, I reached into my purse. My hand didn't shake as I pulled out a manila envelope. I placed it on the table in front of Marcus with a soft tap. You should probably read page 3 before you sign anything, I said calmly. Marcus's confident smile faltered. What is this? Open it. He glanced at Crystal, then Mr. Patterson, then back to me. Slowly, he opened the envelope. I watched his face as he read. Confusion first. Then realization. Then something close to panic. The color drained from his face. His hands started to shake. This can't be. Page 3 is particularly interesting, I said, my voice steady. But you might want to start with page 1. Let me back up. 6 months ago, when Marcus took Dad to that lawyer's appointment, I started to worry. My 15 years in forensic accounting had taught me, when someone acts secretive about money or legal documents, they're usually hiding something. Marcus had insisted on going alone. Dad and I need some guy time. Just boring paperwork stuff.
So I started documenting.
Everything. Every moment of Dad's confusion. I kept a journal. Date, time, what happened. March 3rd. Dad thought I was his mother. Called me Ruby for 3 hours. March 15th. Dad asked where his parents were. Became upset when I reminded him they'd passed. I recorded conversations with his doctor about his cognitive decline. Made sure I had them backed up to the cloud. Mr. Washington's Alzheimer's is progressing faster than we'd hoped, Dr. Chen told me on April 2nd. I recorded it. His short-term memory is severely compromised. I need to be clear, your father should not be making major decisions right now. Financial, legal, medical, anything significant should have oversight. I saved medical reports. Brain scans with notes highlighting deterioration. Cognitive test scores declining month by month. Official diagnosis paperwork. Patient lacks capacity for complex decision-making. And I found something else. Something that changed everything. While organizing Dad's papers, I found his medical records from 6 months before the will update. The file was marked confidential. Inside, paperwork from Dr. Morrison, his physician for 30 years. A formal diagnosis dated March 15th. Early-stage Alzheimer's disease with rapid progression. The doctor's notes were damning. Patient shows significant cognitive impairment. Memory loss affecting daily function. Important. Patient should avoid major financial or legal decisions without medical clearance and family oversight. Decision-making capacity significantly compromised. That appointment happened 4 months before Marcus took Dad to change the will, which meant Dad legally lacked capacity when he signed those papers, which meant Marcus's document was invalid. But that wasn't the devastating part. While going through Dad's old papers in the basement storage, I found something else. A folder, hidden behind tax returns from the 1990s. The label read, Personal, Confidential. Inside, medical records from 30 years ago. From a clinic in Virginia. Paternity test results. Test date, November 8, 1996. 3 weeks after Marcus came to live with us. Probability of paternity, 0%. The report included a handwritten note. Dad's writing. Doesn't matter. He's mine now. I chose him. That's what makes him my son. I sat on the basement floor, holding those papers, crying for the first time since Dad died. Because this was who Dad was. He'd known. Had tested, maybe after Mom died. But knowing the truth, Dad kept Marcus anyway. Raised him. Loved him. Gave him everything. Never told him. Never held it against him. Never treated him differently. Because Dad believed family was built on choice and love, not just blood. And Marcus had repaid that love by manipulating Dad's confused mind to steal everything Dad had built. The irony was almost poetic. Dad had tested when Marcus was 8. Around the time Mom died. The results were clear. William Washington was not Marcus's biological father. But Dad kept Marcus anyway. Raised him. Loved him. Gave him everything. Because that's who Dad was. Now Marcus was using Dad's confused state to steal everything Dad had built. And I had the ammunition to stop him. I needed current proof. The old test might be challenged in court. Technology had advanced. So, I submitted DNA samples to GeneLab, one of the most reputable companies in the country. Used in court cases. Results held up under legal scrutiny. Getting Marcus's DNA was easy. He'd come to the brownstone for funeral planning. I made coffee. Marcus drank from a blue ceramic mug, smooth surface, easy to collect samples. When he left, I bagged the mug carefully. Wore gloves. Followed evidence collection procedures from my fraud cases. GeneLab required 2 weeks. The longest 2 weeks of my life. I went through funeral motions. Accepted condolences. Made arrangements. All while knowing I had DNA samples being compared in a laboratory. The results came 3 days before the will reading. I opened them in my car in a CVS parking lot. Page 3. The comparison. Sibling probability. 0%. Genetic relationship. None detected. The tested individuals do not share a sibling relationship. No significant genetic markers in common. Over 99.9% certain. I took photos. Uploaded to 3 cloud services. Made copies. Put originals in a safe deposit box. Then had results notarized. Got 3 certified copies. Made everything court-ready. The will Marcus fought for? Invalid on 2 fronts. Dad lacked capacity when he signed it, and Marcus's claim as son was based on a relationship that didn't exist, and in inheritance law, biology matters when claims are disputed. This is fake, Marcus said, his voice shaking. This is some kind of fraud. It's from GeneLab, I said calmly. One of the most reputable DNA testing companies in the country. Feel free to verify. This doesn't mean anything. I'm still his son. Legally?
No.
You're not. I pulled out the second folder. This is Dad's medical file from September, the day you took him to change the will. According to his neurologist, he was experiencing severe confusion. The doctor's notes say he shouldn't be making legal decisions. I slid another document across. This is an affidavit from Dad's primary care physician stating he lacked capacity to modify legal documents during the last 8 months of his life. Marcus stared at the papers. Mr. Patterson leaned forward, examining them carefully. If this is accurate, the lawyer said slowly, the September will may be invalid. It is accurate, I said. Which means the original will from 15 years ago stands. The one that splits everything 50-50. Marcus's face went from pale to red. You can't do this. I'm his son. He raised me. And I loved him for that. I said quietly. But you used his illness against him. You manipulated a dying man to steal his estate. Crystal stood up abruptly. Come on, Marcus. We don't need to listen to this. But Marcus couldn't move. He stared at the papers, his carefully constructed plans crumbling. How long have you known, he whispered. About the paternity? 3 weeks. About your fraudulent will? 6 months. Why didn't you say anything? Because I needed to be sure. I needed evidence. I needed to be ready. My voice stayed calm. Steady. I'm a forensic accountant, Marcus. I find fraud for a living. Did you really think I wouldn't notice what you were doing? Marcus's jaw clenched. This is about revenge. You're bitter because Dad trusted me with. Dad was confused and dying, and you took advantage of that. You didn't visit him for 3 years until you wanted something. I was building a business. You were building debt. The room went silent. I pulled out the third folder. This is a financial report. I had a colleague run your credit, your business records, your property holdings. Marcus's eyes widened. You had no right. Your real estate business? Failing. You're 6 months behind on rent for your office. Your properties? 3 of them are in foreclosure. Your credit cards? Maxed out. I looked at Crystal. Did he tell you about the $180,000 in debt? Or the investors threatening to sue him? Crystal's face went pale. She looked at Marcus. You said the business was successful. You said we could afford the beach house. We can, baby. Once I sell the brownstone. Which you don't own. I finished. Because the will is invalid. And even if it wasn't, I'd be contesting it. Which would tie up the estate in probate for 18 months minimum. Marcus stood up, fists clenched. You're destroying me. You're taking everything. I'm taking what's legally mine. There's a difference. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. Given this evidence, I'll need to halt the probate process, pending investigation of the will's validity.
Thank you, I said.
Marcus turned to me, voice desperate. Keisha, please. I need this. I'll lose everything. You should have thought about that before you exploited a dying man. I'm your brother. No, I said quietly. You were Dad's son because he chose to love you despite the DNA. But you stopped being my brother when you stole from him. I stood, gathering my folders. You have until Friday to move your things out of any property claims. After that, I'm filing for full ownership under the original will. You can't do this. Crystal shrieked. We have plans. We have deposits. Then I suggest you get refunds. I walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Marcus? You might want to check your business email. The Maryland State Board received an interesting tip about fraudulent business practices. Something about using Dad's identity and social security number to secure business loans while he was alive. Marcus's face went white. You didn't. I forwarded the documents this morning. Turns out, using someone else's credit without permission is identity theft. Even if that person is your father. Especially when that person was mentally incapacitated. I only did that because the bank wouldn't give me.
He stopped.
Realizing he'd just admitted it. Mr. Patterson's face hardened. Mr. Washington, I strongly suggest you consult a criminal attorney. Marcus sank back into his chair. Crystal grabbed her purse. I need to go. Baby, wait. Don't call me.
Don't contact me.
We're done. She rushed out. Marcus looked at me, eyes filled with a mixture of rage and panic and something that might have been shame. How could you do this to me? How could you do it to Dad? I replied. He loved you, raised you, gave you everything, and you repaid him by stealing his legacy while he couldn't fight back. I opened the door. The house was supposed to be ours, Marcus. Both of ours. Dad wanted us to have it together, to keep it in the family. My voice cracked slightly. The first sign of emotion I'd shown. You could have shared it.
Could have been honest.
Could have actually been there for him while he was dying. I took a breath. Steadied myself. Instead, you chose greed. So now you get the consequences. The next 8 weeks were brutal. Marcus hired Robert Steele, an attorney with a reputation for aggressive tactics. His retainer was $15,000, money Marcus borrowed from a friend. His attorney was aggressive, expensive, and ultimately helpless against the mountain of evidence I'd compiled. They tried to challenge the DNA results, claimed improper collection, contamination. Gene Lab sent a representative to testify, explained procedures, certifications, accuracy rates. The DNA results were irrefutable. They tried to argue DNA didn't matter, that Dad had legally adopted Marcus. But there was no adoption paperwork. Marcus was Dad's stepson. And stepchildren don't automatically inherit without specific designation in a valid will. The medical records were clear. Dr. Morrison testified, brought notes from 30 appointments. Mr. Washington was in significant cognitive decline. By September, he couldn't remember his own address. He frequently forgot what year it was. In my professional opinion, he absolutely lacked capacity to make informed decisions about complex legal documents. The judge ruled the September will invalid. The original will stood. Everything split 50-50. Except, during discovery, my lawyer found bank records.
Wire transfers.
ATM withdrawals. Checks from Dad's account. Small amounts first. 300 here. 500 there. Memo lines. Home repair. Medical expenses. But I'd paid those bills. Had receipts. Then larger withdrawals. 3,000. 5,000. 10,000. Vaguer memos, expenses, miscellaneous. Patricia traced each one. Deposited into Marcus's account. Used for Marcus's business debts. Wired to his creditors. Over 24 months, Marcus had taken $87,000 from Dad's accounts. Elder financial abuse.
Fraud. Theft.
The prosecutor called it systematic exploitation of a vulnerable adult. The criminal charges came down 3 weeks later. Maryland State Board investigation confirmed Marcus had used Dad's Social Security number to secure 3 business loans totaling $240,000. He'd filled out applications using Dad's information. Dad's credit score. Dad's employment history from years ago. Forged Dad's signature on loan documents. The loans funded Marcus's failing real estate business. Paid off previous debts. Kept his properties from foreclosure. Identity theft. A federal crime.
Fraud.
Wire fraud because the applications were submitted electronically. Federal charges carry serious time. Marcus's business collapsed within days. His investors pulled out when news broke. His properties went into foreclosure one by one. His office closed. His employees quit or were let go. His attorney told him he was looking at 5 to 8 years in federal prison. With his financial crimes and the elder abuse charges, the prosecutor wasn't interested in leniency. Marcus called me once, 2 days before his arraignment. His voice was different. Smaller. Scared. Please, Keisha. Tell them you're not pressing charges. Tell them this was a family misunderstanding. That I had permission. I stayed silent for a long moment, looking out the window of the brownstone at the tree Dad had planted when I was born. You stole from a dying man, Marcus. From the man who raised you, loved you, gave you everything despite knowing you weren't his biological son. And you did it because you thought you were smarter than everyone else. I made a mistake. I was desperate. The business was failing and You made dozens of calculated decisions over 2 years. That's not a mistake. That's systematic theft. I'm begging you.
Please.
I'll lose everything. You already lost everything that mattered. You lost your integrity, your family, your father's respect. I'm begging you. I can't drop federal charges even if I wanted to. But I wouldn't. What you did was criminal. Dad deserves justice, even if he's not here to see it. I hung up. I didn't cry. Didn't feel satisfaction. Just emptiness where my brother used to be. Marcus took a plea deal. 3 years in federal prison, 5 years probation, full restitution. He sold everything to pay back the loans in Dad's name. It wasn't enough. He'd be in debt for decades. I kept the brownstone. Not out of spite, but because it was home. Because Dad had built it into something beautiful. The real family. I started a nonprofit called Elder Shield, helping families protect elderly relatives from financial exploitation. We provide free forensic accounting services, legal guidance, and advocacy. Within 6 months, we helped 42 families prevent or recover from elder abuse. Within a year, we'd saved families over $3 million in fraudulent claims. The work filled something my corporate job never had. I wasn't just tracking numbers. I was protecting people, honoring Dad's memory. 2 years after Dad's death, I met James. He came to one of our Elder Shield fundraisers, a lawyer specializing in elder law. His grandmother had been financially exploited by a caregiver, and our organization had helped his family recover. We talked for 3 hours that night. He asked me to coffee the next week, then dinner, then a slow, careful relationship built on honesty and respect. James never rushed me, never pressured me. Just existed alongside me while I healed. You saved my grandmother's house, he told me 6 months in. My family would have lost everything if not for your organization. That's why I do it, I said. No one should go through what I did. I live in Dad's brownstone still. 3rd floor apartment, just like before. But now I've turned the 2nd floor into Elder Shield's headquarters. The house is filled with purpose again, with people working to protect families. With Dad's legacy, honored properly. People ask if I've forgiven Marcus. I pause when they do. Forgiveness implies I'm still carrying what he did. I'm not. I released it. Not for him.
For me.
Marcus's choices taught me something crucial. You can't control other people's decisions, but you can control your response.
Il chose documentation.
Preparation. Justice. And in doing so, I protected Dad's legacy and created something meaningful from the pain. Marcus gets out of federal prison in 8 months. I heard through extended family that he's working in the prison library, taking accounting courses, ironically. He wrote me a letter 6 months ago. I opened it, read it, and filed it away. It was full of apologies, explanations, justifications.
Some of it might even be genuine.
But I'm not ready. Maybe I never will be. That's okay. 3 years after Dad died, I stood in the Brownstones' living room during an Elder Shield event. 60 people filled the space. Families we'd helped, volunteers, donors, lawyers and accountants who joined our mission. My father built this house with his own hands, I told them. He built his business from nothing. He believed in hard work, integrity, and taking care of family. I looked around the room. When he died, someone tried to erase that legacy, tried to steal what he'd built and turn it into something selfish. I smiled. But legacy isn't just property or money. It's values. It's what we do with what we're given. It's how we honor those who came before us. This house stands not because I fought for it, but because my father's values deserve to be protected. And now, it serves those values by helping others. After the event, I stood on the front steps, watching people leave. James came up beside me, putting his arm around my shoulders. "Your dad would be proud," he said quietly. I leaned against him, looking up at the brownstone. The lights glowing warm in the windows. The historic brick facade. The mahogany door. "Yeah," I whispered. "He would." And for the first time since Dad died, I felt complete peace. Not because Marcus was punished. Not because I'd won. But because Dad's house, Dad's legacy, was exactly what it was always meant to be. A home. A haven. A place where family meant something real. The trash had taken itself out. And what remained was worth everything. If you've been betrayed by family, know this. You didn't cause it. You couldn't prevent it. But you can choose what happens next. You can choose documentation over emotion. You can choose preparation over panic. You can choose justice over revenge. And when you do, you'll discover what I did. The life waiting on the other side of betrayal is the one you were meant to live all along.